Happy politics, and welcome to your favorite BC political podcast. This is BC Poly Hot Stove. I'm laughing right off the top because Jordan surprised me with a novelty mug on his side of our socially distant studio here. Show us so we can actually, what does that actually say?
It says, believe in your elf, because we are now in the Christmas season, Maclean, and I, for one, am here for it all.
Hey, I mean, Advent calendars can be open tomorrow, which in our house means 2 different Advent calendars. Neither of them are mine.
Oh, I was just saying, one for you. Let me guess. One is Lego, and one is dinosaur bones for your wife.
No, one is Lego and one is candy.
Oh, okay.
One is, yes, the dinosaur bones do not come in Advent. That is a great idea, though. I'm going to take a note of that.
Okay, right then.
That's just actually a really good idea. Anyway, I haven't even introduced ourselves yet. That's how off the rails the show is this week. My name is Maclean K. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Orca, and I'm joined, as previously mentioned, in a socially distant manner by...
George_Affleck. No, just kidding. It's Jordan Bateman, VP Comms for the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association, the mighty ICBA here in Surrey.
You got to make, like, the noise when you make the underscore. Like, that's awesome. Please don't ever stop doing that, George. It is literally my favorite thing about that podcast. Well, that and the song introductions off the top. That's also really good. We should try that one of these days.
It's not my favorite thing. I go for the insightful commentary.
Oh, well, okay, now I'm embarrassed, and I'm going to get an angry text from Jody and George. So that's how my Tuesday afternoon's going to go. Speaking of upset people, Jordan, let's start with everyone who is filing an FOI request with the provincial government today. They're being greeted with a $10 fee. Now, we knew that the NDP was going to introduce fees. The news is that it's new and that they have the amount $10. But I encourage everyone to read Vaughn Palmer's column this morning in the Vancouver Sun. He lays out how on Thursday, the minister, Lisa Bear, was still saying, well, it's a process. I can't even talk about a fee right now. It's a cabinet decision. And there's just no way I can even discuss this here in the legislature. It's neither the time nor the place when it's both the time and the place. Literally hours later, she signed an executive order saying it would be $10. There was no cabinet meeting that night. It was not a cabinet decision unless that decision was weeks ago. So either cabinet did not make the decision or it made it a long time ago. And either way, what she said is, I'm going to say, not accurate.
I believe it's a nose stretcher. It would be one that, for you old school people. No, yeah, you're exactly correct. First of all, Vaughn dubs her the Minister of Misinformation. When Vaughn Palmer nicknames you something, it generally sticks, number one, and number two, it's generally not good. So Lisa Bear, the Minister of Misinformation. And this is really cynical politics by the NDP.
Yeah.
For a party that claims to, be, sunshine and roses and, care about transparency and care about people's rights and whatnot, this really is trampling over all of that. And it's, frankly, a disgusting move. It's one that virtually every organization in BC has come out against, ICBA included, with our, usual friends in the civil liberties unions, civil liberties in the unions. And, it's done one thing. It's united the British Columbia advocacy world against them. Even the Tyee is rolling their eyes at this. And then, so it is bad policy made worse by the fact that they refuse to debate it, compounded by the fact that Murray Rankin is sitting there as apparently one of the great paragons of freedom of information in this province's history. And his reputation is now garbage on this because he wouldn't utter a word of defense except in an online newsletter at one point, during the worst of the storms. And now you have the Minister of Misinformation who, they jammed through the bill essentially at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday. She's still claiming they haven't made any decisions on fees, and they will consult widely, Maclean. Stop me if you heard that before. Widely. They're going to consult widely. 4 p.m., 5 p.m., they give it final reading, again, rammed through the House. 6 p.m., I believe the LG stops by and signs all the bills into law. And then by 7 p.m., a ministerial order has magically appeared, signed by Lisa Bear, the Minister of Misinformation, and George Heyman, who I believe is still Environment. And,
you need 2 ministers to sign off if you're wondering why it's him.
It's law. And here's the hilarious thing. By yesterday, Monday, they already had the $10 fee up on the FOI website, but you couldn't pay online. So you could make a request online, but you had to send a check or call in a Visa number on Cyber Monday. Just so foolishly implemented idiotic in its plan, and really it's designed to do one thing: slam down on the democratic right of taxpayers to know what's going on through our voices in the media and advocacy groups and the individuals themselves. And it's a disgusting abuse of democracy. There's no other way to put it.
Well, I agree, and the only thing that I would add is you mentioning the what it's designed to do, and taxpayers. I agree with that, but I also think what the NDP was really trying to do is they're trying to put their foot down on the opposition, who have been making copious use of FOI. I mean, literally every question period in this last session was many of the questions were prefaced by look at this document we obtained through FOI, and let's ask you about it. So. $10, even if let's talk about the BC Liberal opposition and the Green opposition too, because this applies to them just as much. Their budget is paid for by the taxpayers, the caucus. We're not talking about parties. And so if the opposition parties are doing their job and continue to do their job and look up freedom of information requests on government and ask questions based on what they find, that's going to cost them. But it doesn't cost them. It comes out of their budget, which is funded by the taxpayer. It's kind of ridiculous. All it does is kind of hems them in and sort of imposes a cap without actually calling it a cap. They're only going to allocate so much of their budget to FOI, otherwise they're going to have to start firing people, and they're not going to do that, obviously. So you're right, it's very cynical. The NDP did on a couple of occasions say, well, they just file a lot of FOI requests. Okay, great. Put a limit on it.
Yeah.
Put a limit on the number. We can talk about the number, and I'm sure whatever they would put in would be too strict, but at least that would be a step in the right direction. Their solution doesn't actually address what they say is the problem.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Or take a look at what the requests actually are and say, hey, if we proactively disclose this, we can cut 35 requests a year or 100 requests a year. Parliamentary calendars, for example, calendars of ministers, for example. Just proactively disclosing random things. Like, just go that route. Instead, you've gone the route where you trample democracy, you treat taxpayers like garbage. Look, good on the BC Liberals for FOIing this stuff, because they don't get answers in question period from this government. It's not like when they ask a question, the government ever gives them a straight, honest answer. It's a heckle and, 17 years of blah, 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 blah. Come on. So what else are they supposed to do to hold you to account? But that, again, comes down to the crux of the matter. This isn't about the opposition. It's not about Bob Maclean. It's not about groups like mine. It's about hiding the truth from the public and trying to make sure that they're elected for life. It reminds me a little bit of when municipal politicians ban election signage in a community because they have the advantage of name recognition, and so they try to suffocate in the crib all of their opponents. Terrible. It's just democracy. Just let it happen. These freedom of information requests. The Union of BC, it's just across the First Nations groups, Indigenous groups, our group. We all want this to be allowed. So I'll tell you what ICBA did yesterday. They passed this thing, so we immediately became a Patreon of Bob Maclean's Breaker News, because clearly whatever Bob Maclean's doing is pissing off the NDP. So we have we're not a rich organization, but we have some resources. So okay, Bob, we'll stand up for your right to ask government questions. And if that's helpful to him in funding 100 requests next year, great. But here's the other thing. So on Twitter, I've really only had pushback from two people on Twitter about this. One is a troll with 0 followers, signed up in November 2022 or 2021. And she's hilarious, and I just muted her, and now if she actually is a real human, is just kind of tweeting into nowhere. The other one is David Schreck, who,
really?
Pun intended, tried to cleave a difference between people who should be allowed to complain about FOI and should not be allowed to complain about FOI. And his thing was if you've never filed an FOI request, you don't have the right to complain. Well, I have filed hundreds of FOI requests in my 20-something years as a reporter and a taxpayer advocate and now at the ICBA. So, I guess I have the right to complain, and he confirmed that on Twitter that I do have the right to complain. But even if you've never used FOI, even if you're a reporter who just doesn't do that kind of investigative work or doesn't cover provincial politics or whatever, you still absolutely have a right to this information. You're a taxpayer. You're a citizen of the province of British Columbia. This information belongs to you. We elect a government to steward our information and our resources. We don't elect a government to hide nonsense, to hide what they're doing from us. So they have a right to do that. I don't buy into that theory that if you've never filed an FOI request, you shouldn't complain. We should all be complaining about this because government is frankly hiding the truth and facts from the electorate who owns this information.
Yeah, and I mean, the final word on this should be that the NDP in opposition made great use of FOI, as they should have as the official opposition. That was their job. And always be suspicious of legislation that smacks of somebody pulling up the ladder behind them. Once they've made it into government, we can change the rules now to make it better for government. You would be upset if it was Stephen Harper or Andrew Wilkinson or Christy Clark doing it or Jagmeet Singh. So you should be upset when it's John Horgan doing it.
Yeah, and what are you going to do when the pendulum swings and you're not in power anymore and you don't have access to that again? And it happens. Guess what? We don't elect governments for life. It swings back and forth. It may take 17 years. It may take 4. You just don't know. I will say this too. Lisa Bear, Minister of Misinformation, needs to remember something. Minister Bear is in a swing riding. Now, it didn't swing back to the BC Liberals last time, but the Valley could very well swing, especially given the absolutely putrid response to the flooding and other issues. Housing cost crime that are going on in Maple Ridge and the surrounding area. And, the Minister of Misinformation, that's a nice tagline for whoever ends up running against her in that riding. And I suspect this will be like a rock in her shoe over and over again. She's going to feel the pain of this. And I hope it was worth it for that fat minister's check.
Yeah, fat check.
But
fat check.
That fat check.
Fact check. Speaking of flood response, the Prime Minister, Jordan, was here, and I mean Victoria, on Friday evening. They did a tour of some of the flood-stricken areas, I think mostly by air. Now, I'm going to be honest, the fact that this press media availability was at like 6:15 on a Friday evening was not particularly helpful. But the Prime Minister's schedule is what it is. It's better he came here late than not at all, which is, a bit of a pattern for him. And there wasn't a lot of news that came out of it. There wasn't a lot of, we already knew the army was coming in. There didn't appear to be a lot of, help is on the way from Ottawa.
Yeah, this was an interesting one. So, first of all, there's a great Instagram account called Cbus Memes, who put out a meme of a flooded Abbotsford and Justin Trudeau surfing through it. I guarantee you 100% more people have seen that meme than have any idea that Trudeau actually did visit flood-ravaged Abbotsford.
I agree with that.
And I'm here for it because that was a great meme. Well done, whoever you are, Cbus Memes. Love it. But what a weird time to come. Like, I just sit back and go, okay, picture if this was the GTA or Montreal. And there was this kind of catastrophic flooding that actually cut you off from the supply lines to the rest of the nation. We wouldn't be able to get rid of Justin Trudeau. He would be around 24/7. He'd be out filling sandbags at dikes. He'd be out, just think of the showboating and grandstanding he could do. Oh my God, there'd be hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in federal relief coming in. And instead, we get a photo op that was supposed to be at 4:30, and they got bumped to 5, and then 5:15, and then 6, and then 6:15 on a friggin' Friday night. The media are exhausted because they've been covering this thing 24/7. So, doom scrolling Ty Olson's reports out of Abbotsford, all these things. I never saw it online, his visit. I can't even picture him. I can't picture the picture of him. I don't think I saw a photo of him with volunteers or the hard hat on or the bomber jacket trying to look like he's doing something. None of that. So if you don't see it, did it really happen? And where was the fat check to help these poor British Columbians who have lost everything? Where was that money from the federal government? Trudeau sneezes and $25 million worth of funding comes out. Where's our funding on this? What a non-event, what a non-starter, and frankly, what a lack of leadership from the Prime Minister and his office, who should be taking this a whole lot more seriously than they are.
One of the lessons I think we'll take from this is what can happen if you are too slow to move on disasters. And I'm not talking about immediate day of response. Let's remember Lytton for a moment here, which burned to the ground in the summer. And the residents of Lytton are still mostly in hotels and wondering where they're going to spend Christmas, when the town, there's a pile of things they don't know. That was a couple of disasters ago. If Lytton is still sort of left hanging, drifting in the breeze. I mean, the people on Sumas Prairie, the parts of Princeton, Merritt, Abbotsford that have been evacuated. I mean, it can't be very inspiring for them to, look north and see the people of Lytton, many of whom were staying, had been evacuated to these places, and thinking, well, I mean, that was months ago, and they don't know what's coming. So how long are we going to be waiting? When you move slowly on one crisis, you're kind of implicitly assuming the next crisis is a little ways out to come. When you put stuff off and events keep coming, you get caught up. And so, I mean, it's hard not to look at Lytton and then also look at Sumas Prairie and Merritt and Abbotsford and think, it's a long road ahead, guys.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And again, you come down to the hypocrisy of this on the federal level. If this was Lytton, Quebec, Lytton, Ontario, my God, the money that would be flowing in, those people would be put up in mansions by now. Instead, it's Lytton, BC, so they're ignored. I mean, poor Jackie Taggart has to get up in the House and beg the NDP to tell her anything for her constituents. Like, what is happening? Can you tell us absolutely anything at all? We've got people living in motels. Like, can you tell us anything about what you're doing for them? Crickets. Well, talking points. 17 years. Whatever. It's disgusting how poorly these people have been treated. I said disgusting twice now. It was a disgusting attack on democracy, and it's disgusting, or maybe despicable, how these people are being treated. They're victims. They're victims of a major disaster, times 2 now, and we still aren't doing enough to help them, to give them confidence that there's any kind of plan or vision going forward. Like, if the answer is, guys, we're not rebuilding Lytton, at least let them make at least give them the decision. Although it's frustrating to me, these poor people who've lost everything, being treated so shabbily by their own government that they pay taxes for, that they elect. I just don't understand that kind of slow response.
I mean, my neighborhood where I live has an email group that, if there's a cat missing or something suspicious happens or someone's fence is broken or anything, you find out in 5 minutes, and then people rally and react as needed. It works really well. It is amazing to me that the government can't do that for, people like the people who've been displaced from Lytton. And even just to say, like, look, it's been a week. I know there's not a lot of updates. We're still thinking of you. We're working on stuff. Something. Even hearing that, yes, there's no progress, but we know you're there. That kind of thing can go a long way. It's the silence and wondering if they're even thinking about you. That's the stuff that really hurts.
And there's no more excuses, Maclean. Like, COVID showed us that government in a crisis can act fast. Yep. Maybe not always act correctly, but they can sure act fast when they need to. They shoveled money out of the door at every level and acted quickly. And now we have a crisis that's just as real to the people of Lytton as COVID was is to the rest of us. And nothing. It boggles the mind that this is what we stand for in this province. And again, I come down to, like, what a failure in leadership this has been. The NDP are running around now and trying to look like, trying to get ahead of the parade, like, oh no, we're damming they're damming Highway 1 to protect it. It's actually the Army and Abbotsford kind of doing that. And again, I just don't know if the province wants to be the coordinator and the leader on this, then lead. Instead, we get this kind of weird mishmash we get now, and man, something has got to change. Like, the Colin Commission has been given a 6-month extension, and to May now to get the report. They're supposed to have it out this month. Now it's, I guess, May. 4 years the Colin Commission has been acting. So I'm not a big, independent inquiry guy, but man, I do wonder if an inquiry into this emergency response might be valid. Like, it costs a fortune and it takes forever, but if it can give us some sort of recommendations going forward, maybe it would be helpful.
Well, especially since we know there are more disasters coming, and we need to learn these lessons. This will not be a historical curiosity.
No, exactly. And look, bluntly, Daniel Marshall's piece in the Orca shows that wasn't as out of the blue as as John Horgan might have suggested. There were warning signs. There have been reports for years. We've been talking internally here at ICBA a lot about this, like the need to refocus this government on core infrastructure. The next disaster could be an earthquake. And we've have decades of reports about what will happen to the Massey Tunnel in an earthquake. And this government, instead of opening a bridge this year, which it was on schedule to do, is instead punted down the road another 5-10 years, some sort of mythical tunnel that may or may not ever be built. Meanwhile, Delta has reports saying that, hey, in an earthquake, the lights will go out in the tunnel, it will begin to leak, and in a catastrophic earthquake, it'll snap in half and float out to sea. Think about that the next time you go on Highway 99. I do every friggin' time I go on Highway 99. I've read a lot of government reports. I've never read one that was like a horror movie, except that one by the Corporation of Delta. And, you know, every time I get into there, I'm like, please don't let now be the moment.
Is it a Sylvester Stallone movie about a tunnel that floods in an earth?
Yeah. Rocky ain't coming to save us in this one, boys. Like,
no, he's not.
He's not going to be there to get us out of that tunnel. You're dead. In fact, the tunnel may actually turn in the water. Like, it may tumble, think how terrifying that's going to be. And instead of shoring it up, finding a way to build infrastructure quickly and invest in it, we delay it. Patello Bridge is another example. 90-year-old bridge. It's falling to pieces into the river. There's a net under it, catching pieces.
I don't mean to keep laughing. I mean, it's hard not to. It's scary.
And look, like, if I could get 90 years of use out of every piece of infrastructure the government invested in, I'd be a pretty happy taxpayer advocate. In fact, I'll sell it for 75 years. That'd be great. But they delayed this project, and now they're sort of getting around to it, but they're not really, it doesn't really seem like they're going great guns on replacing it. Again, imagine being on the Patello they actually close it during big windstorms now, but imagine being on the Patello during an earthquake. Like, these disasters are coming. We shouldn't be surprised. But I don't know, it just seems like the provincial government is like, oh, I can't believe we've been talking, like, for a left-wing government that talks so much about climate change, that is very invested in, you know, winning Dr. Weaver's seal of approval for their climate plan, there is a stunning lack of understanding that mitigation is now the way to go. That we are not stopping climate change. We can cut off every piece of energy in this province to go back to the Stone Age here. We are not stopping climate change in this world, so we better invest and get ready and mitigate. Forget about fancy climate plans to talk about, you know, wind turbines and stuff. Let's get to the climate plan that show how we're going to invest in infrastructure, put the billions of dollars that are necessary into dikes, into shoring up infrastructure, make sure that it's not just climate but earthquake proof. That is what we should be investing in now. And until you see that kind of leadership and acknowledgement from John Horgan, Mike Farnworth, George Heyman, those folks in Victoria, like, it's scary. Get an emergency kit. Make sure you have 3 to 7 days worth of stuff, because if this thing has shown us anything, is government will act very, 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 very slowly, and you're going to be on your own for a period of time.
I want to quickly just grab on. You mentioned Daniel Marshall's piece this weekend in the Orca. If you haven't read it, please do. It's absolutely excellent. He looks at some of the catastrophic floods in the same region in the past, I believe in 1898 and 1948, and also what makes those floods different from the ones we have just been experiencing in a very crucial way. And it's been interesting watching people say, well, this is, you know, climate change denialism. No, actually, he comes to the opposite conclusion at the end. So please just read the whole thing before you spout off. But anyway, it's just another excellent look at crucial events, 3 of them now in BC's history.
Well, just on Marshall's piece, what I also liked is he gave an honest appraisal of BC as an agricultural place, which is, we don't have a lot of space for agriculture. Like, we don't have a lot of fertile agriculture, which is why we do things like drain Sumas Lake to create the most fertile agricultural land in all of Canada that feeds millions and millions and millions of people. So it's easy to say, oh, just let Sumas Lake fill, and, you know, screw those farmers who, you know, lose all their land and livestock, whatever. Why are we fighting Mother Nature? No, we're fighting Mother Nature because we want to feed people in this country. So I thought that was an interesting point as well that he made, and kudos to Daniel. Like, he's a gem. Like, he's a legend.
Yeah.
And, man, I love reading his stuff.
There are no farmers' fields in Mother Nature. So, no, I mean, exactly. That's
very good. Look at you.
Look at me. Look at me. Speaking of looking at new people, Jordan, I thought that we had all of the contenders for the BC Liberal leadership race identified and named. We learned yesterday there's someone else who is applying. He has not been approved, which we learned is not automatic. And I know so little about him, Jordan, that I'm not entirely certain how to pronounce his last name. Stan Sipos or Sipos. Yeah. He's a Victoria developer. I learned this just before we went to air. I don't think it's the same guy, but if you Google him,
no, it is. I think it is the same guy. I think it is the same guy.
Really? So
Drag Racing Hall of Fame?
Drag Racing Hall of Fame?
I suspect it is. because he looks like
Oh,
this the
man.
right age. Anyways, okay.
And
So
by drag racing, we mean like not the RuPaul version, but like the
wow, we don't know.
super, well, and maybe who knows? I mean, it could be on the weekend, but I think they mean necessarily the supercharged vehicles that go as fast as possible in one direction without ever turning. I didn't know they had a Hall of Fame, and if this is the same individual, that is very interesting and very cool. That said, I don't see a path to him winning this.
What? You don't think he's going to? Okay, well, first of all, number one, he, if you're in the Drag Racing Hall of Fame, one would think that you would know how to start on time. Number two, so little victory lap here. You first heard about this on @JordanBateman on Twitter. No underscore for @JordanBateman. Because someone texted it to me and was like, ever heard of this guy? And so I go on, he has 5 followers. He has a video where he's in like an echoey hallway, rambling on about how climate change is upon us. And yeah, apparently he is applied to the party to be in the leadership race. I had to double check the rules. You have until tomorrow, Wednesday, December 1st, to apply and be approved for the race. Not sure what his members sign-up plan is, because I believe the deadline for members is December 19th. So this is going to be a whirlwind 18 days of thousands of memberships flying in, no doubt, to support Stan Sipos. He has a family-owned development company, Cielo, C-I-E-L-O, Cielo. Not an ICBA member. I checked our database. So
Best to be sure.
never heard of him. Never heard of Cielo. Never heard of, not sure how this is a big splash. I can tell you I was Twitter follower number 5 for Stan. He's up to 22 this morning.
Oh,
So
wow.
that shows you the
Exponential growth.
The power of my reach.
I don't mean to. I mean, if you're listening, sir, not mocking your follower count, and good on you for stepping up and getting involved. But I mean, it's late. We're two fairly politically aware and involved people, and I don't know you. And so, if you're doing this to raise your profile, great. I guess that's allowed. But I'd be curious why. I'm curious why you're doing this and why now. These are not challenges. These are questions.
Yes. Feel free to email editor@theorca.ca. Maclean would be happy to interview you.
I would, actually.
But, we don't know where you live, what your background is. Are you the Canadian Drag Racing Hall of Fame person? Because I actually find that kind of funny and interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm all for interesting candidates. It's... Where were you 6 months ago or 3 months ago or 30 days ago? Like, what's drawing you into the race now? Is it something you've seen on the debate stage you don't like? Or it's just a perplexing kind of thing. Like even, there's always the also-rans in these races. Ed Main was one. At least Ed Main had been the mayor of Parksville.
That's true.
So he had held elected office. I don't know what to say with Stan Sipos except that all of us political nerd junkie types are just waiting for the, press release or announcement or whatever. Here's the question. If the party says no to him, Maclean, will he also go off and form his own party, a la Aaron Gunn? Or will he, what do you think, fade into the sunset? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's not something a drag racer would do, is fade into the sunset. I'm kind of sorry he missed the first 2 debates because, we had Val Litwin talking about operating systems. Yeah. I would have liked to have heard the drag racing metaphor for politics, Yeah. You pick where you want to go, and you go as fast as you can there, and you don't turn, ever.
Now, is drag racing the one where you go straight ahead and then you pull the chute, and then the chute slows you down?
Yeah.
I feel like
Except
Gavin...
for the RuPaul version, which is totally different.
I feel like...
Again, maybe what he's doing. I don't know.
I feel like Gavin do pull the chute line coming up in the next debate if this guy makes it.
That does feel like a very Gavin line, doesn't it?
Yeah. All right. So do you want to talk about the real candidates now, or the approved candidates now?
The confirmed candidates.
Yes.
Yes. If you have any weekly updates, I know there was a debate last night at the Surrey Board of Trade. Yeah. But if there's anything else coming from the leadership campaign, Jordan.
So I've been making some calls. I've been having some lunches. And this is what I do for you people. I reach out to campaigns because Maclean and I were very surprised at the last debate when it was the pile on Ellis Ross. And so clearly there's a dynamic that these campaigns are feeling that we want to call around and explore. And I can tell you, every campaign I talk to does sense that there is some momentum for Ellis. That Ellis is resonating with a group of members and signing up members. Not in the numbers that the Falcon campaign is signing them up. but that he is resonating well in bringing in new memberships, and that the current membership of the BC Liberal Party finds him to be a very interesting and attractive candidate. There's also the sense that Ellis is a bit of a one-man show. And it's that this is the other side of the edge when it comes to that kind of John McCain common sense, straight talk express campaign that Ellis has been running. And that's, can he build the team that would be necessary to rebuild the party? Because the leader is important, very important in the party's rebrand, repositioning, and refresh. But you got to have the team that's willing to work with you, to go out there and help you with messaging, to attract new candidates, create the environment at the party itself that can win. So there's a lot that has to be there. And my sense is that there's a bit of concern among these other candidate groups that maybe the Ross campaign apparatus isn't sophisticated enough to handle that kind of rebuild. So a couple things would happen. Look, if Ellis Ross won, he would staff up as he saw fit, and he would hire, I'm sure, great people, and I'm sure there'd be lots of interest in going to work for him. He's a very interesting candidate. He would be a very interesting leader to work for. The great thing about Ellis is you would always know where you stood as his chief of staff or DCOM or policy person. You would never be guessing. Sometimes in politics, you're kind of guessing, like, this is personally, am I okay? Ellis, I'm pretty sure, would tell you. So I do think he would attract people to his team. But this is a concern identified by the other campaigns. And of course, these campaigns want to win. So if someone has momentum, they've got to find ways to kind of to push them down.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I mean, the dynamic, we've talked about this before, the dynamic that he brings to the legislature and this race is not like anyone else. Yeah. And there would be all of everything about Ellis Ross, the man aside, it would be fascinating to have an Indigenous, in this case, leader of the opposition, and potentially an Indigenous premier. I mean, it would be, at the very least, consider how much more challenging that would be for the NDP to campaign against.
Yeah, I mean, it would be historic. It's might be, there's no ultimate step in truth and reconciliation. That would be a major step forward in truth and reconciliation in this province. If he's leading the opposition, questions about why didn't you consult Indigenous leaders on the $10 fee for FOI, and why didn't you consult Indigenous leaders on how you're serving children with autism, that would resonate a lot more, I think, with the media. UNDRIP right now, the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, is sort of just a piece of paper that government has passed but does not seem to have influenced at all NDP policymaking. Having that Indigenous leaders of the opposition would greatly change that. So yeah, it would be a very, very interesting dynamic. The other thing I heard is that, the Falcon campaign is signing up the bulk of the new members. The Ross campaign is signing up a big chunk of the rest of them. The Lee campaign seems more focused on renewing the members that signed up 4 years ago for Michael Lee. And that's an interesting, it's harder to track for the campaigns. It's an important part of their overall strategy, and they're still signing up new members as well. But, the question I have is this. When a big part of Kevin Falcon's team worked for Michael Lee in the last campaign. A big part of Gavin Dew's team, including Gavin himself, worked for Michael Lee in that last campaign. Are they nibbling away any of those Michael Lee supporters internally? And that's the dynamic that we just won't know until the votes get counted, because there's no polling done of BC Liberal members.
And you're right, it's impossible to know. It's an interesting strategy in that, 4 years ago, Michael Lee, I believe he signed up the most new members, and I think it actually wasn't all that close. And so it's actually not a bad idea. They already have leads, if you want to look at it that way. But you're right, for those of us looking from the outside, it's just kind of, it's a concept. We have no way of tracking it until the convention.
Yeah, and like for you and me who watch these guys every day, like our view of Michael might have changed over the past 3 or 4 years given his performance in opposition. For the average person maybe who signs the membership for Michael Lee back then, there's an incentive, right? Like, people hate to be proven wrong. So if you vote for someone once, you generally are more likely to vote for them a second time, because unless something egregious happens, you don't want to be proven wrong in your initial impression. And that's that's a good place for the Lee campaign to mine votes. So if you're looking at paths to victory, Falcons is pretty easy, right? Like lots of new members and a chunk of the existing ones. The Ross campaign is, fewer new members, about the same number of existing ones, but kind of everyone else filtering up in an anyone but Kevin campaign. And then Michael Lee, which is, the bulk of our members are already signed up. We just got to renew them.
Yeah. I mean, if you're someone working for Michael Lee, or indeed Michael Lee yourself, it's a pretty obvious value proposition. Hi, Michael. To your people you signed up 4 years ago. Because, like, look, the value proposition at the time was the party's vote share is declining, and it's declining in the communities and areas of the province that are growing the fastest. Bless you. And the last election would kind of be like, look, we were right. It's not a difficult case to make, really, assuming that you already sold them on that case 4 years ago. I don't mean to make it sound like it's a con or a sale, but like the case that was made by the campaign 4 years ago, the events of the last election kind of bore that out.
Yeah, and it assumes two things. Number one, that one major thing, that the Lee campaign still has the list of who they signed up last time.
Yes.
Because a big part of their apparatus went to other places. So the question is that list still, and because it went to other places, that means these other campaigns also know who signed up for you. So it's an interesting dynamic. I'm still fairly confident that Kevin Falcon's going to win this. But the conversations I've had this week with different campaigns, I think has shown me that there is a path for Ellis and a narrower but still a path for Michael as well.
Yeah. I'm curious. I wonder if there's ever been any work done on this kind of thing. If you were a potential or former or current member of any party, it doesn't have to be the BC Liberal Party, and a leadership campaign approaches you and says, you're not a member currently, maybe you were in the past, or we need you to renew. Does that necessarily mean that you're even more likely to vote for them? I mean, if you're a lapsed member and Renee Merrifield or Gavin Dew approaches you and says, hey, if you want to vote in the upcoming leadership campaign, you need to join. You buying the membership from them, I wonder how often that translates into putting them number one on the ballot. I don't know the answer.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, like Tip O'Neill in his great book, All Politics is Local, will tell you the number one way to get a vote is to actually ask for it. So he tells a great story about how he used to mow the lawn of the widow next door for years, and finally he was shocked to find out he didn't vote for her, or she didn't vote for him, and she's like, well, I like to be asked, and so asked me. So he had to ask and get her vote for the second time. So people like to be asked for votes, right? Like that's a pretty basic kind of thing. My sense is the lapsed BC Liberal member is not getting a ton of love or attention these days. So if a Renee Merrifield is reaching out to them, that probably holds a lot of sway if they've renewed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And look, I don't think we know from the numbers, the average BC Liberal member is not watching debates and forming their decisions this way. So they're signing up probably with someone in mind to vote for.
The average British Columbian is not watching debates. I know you have somewhere to be, and we have, I think, more than put in our time this week. So until next week, he's Jordan Bateman. I'm Maclean K. I'm not going to miss the tagline this time. Happy politics.